Today we're going to talk about taxes, and I will use the Bible as one reference, but I do not expect anyone to take it as religion. Take it as theology. Take it as a book that was written by a person. That is all. We'll look at the idea that was put forth in the Bible. There's no other discussion about this. There is just the idea itself. Today's subject is about taxes. And there are two big problems that seem to be ignored. The first is taxes are incredibly complex. The first part, being complex, I've seen numerous laws applying to taxes. The more complicated ones about how much can be refunded after the taxes have been taken out, which is basically a waste of time. Anytime something has to go back and forth, it is time, money, resources wasted. If they were going to offer anything in a refund, they could simply assume a certain amount. It would make more feasible sense for everyone, including the government, if they simply did not tax you as much. Just as a very simplified method, imagine instead of getting 100% of your tax return, you would only get 50% of it, but that was guaranteed. It would be basically, it wouldn't even be returned. It would be taxes you do not pay. The money would not be tied up. You wouldn't have to do paperwork, nothing. And everybody's taxes would be lightened because of this. They would not expect you to do the work. You already do a job. You already take care of yourself at home. You probably take care of others. There is no reason that you need to do more paperwork. Just as a side note, I never had any schooling as far as taxes are concerned. There was nothing about it. It was actually in home ec that I was even given any instruction on how to write a check. And this was in 10th grade. The process was simple enough, and it's something I haven't done very much, especially with everything moving to credit cards and so forth. But you would think that there would be more instruction day in, day out. And this could be part of math class, telling you how to calculate something that the knowledge can be applied to. Not just simply saying, here's multiplication. It's like, here's the situation where you use this. And this has come up. I've actually had to teach my fellow classmates about something because they did not have a point of reference. They had no idea why they were learning this. And there were even variables to certain math functions that were not addressed by the teacher, nor in the math book itself. The question was simply given, but the method of how to get the solution was never given. Very strange. Anyway, the second problem we're dealing with is a concept of taxing the rich more, which makes absolutely zero sense. Now, I'll have to backtrack a little bit. In the Bible, there were two types of taxes. It was basically a flat rate, which means you were taxed only a certain amount. It didn't matter how much or how little you made. You were taxed a certain amount, and everything after that was entirely your money. Just as an example, and I'm using today's currency, you would be taxed, say, let's 1,000 a year, maybe 10,000 a year. Everything else would be your money. That was it. It was your money. It was not a percentage nor anything like that. Every period you would pay a flat amount. there's a lot of incentive to do better. But also you knew what your taxes were. It was very simple. The other one was based on percentage, and when I say percentage, I do not mean a gradual scale. I mean 1%. You would be taxed maybe 1%, 5%, 10%, 15%, but everybody was taxed the same percentage, rich and poor alike. Now, of course, this would be if you really thought that rich people should be paying more in taxes. Fine, by a percentage. When you make more, you give more, but you give the same percentage. And it does not increase no matter how much money you make. Now, when I'm talking about taxes, I'm of course talking about America, because those are the taxes that I'm looking at, just in case anyone was confused. Taxes do not increase by percentage per se. If you make more, you don't simply pay more based on how much you make. You pay, and this is the confusing part, it's a way that to make things quote-unquote more fair. Or you don't simply just pay more taxes. It's not like some people have postulated that if you make more money, you can actually lose money because the percentage will be higher. It doesn't work that way. Just as an example, the first $10,000 you make is taxed at 10%. So you make $10,000, you owe $1,000. And then the next 10,000 after that, and this is not the actual numbers, this is just an example. The next 10,000 you make after that will be taxed at 12%. So you will owe $1,200. So your total, if you make $20,000, is not $2,000. The total you have would basically be 1,000 plus 1,200. You would owe $2,200. But you don't apply the $20,000 rate. You would basically owe $2,200 instead of $2,400. Sorry if anyone's confused by that, but that's how the taxes work. You're taxed by brackets. So basically, if you are a person who doesn't make much money, supposedly you're not paying as much, but this is also very deceptive. It doesn't mean that the amount is fair. When you get beyond a certain point, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's taxed at 30 or even 60%, I think, in some cases, which is ridiculous. Now, the reason why this is a problem is because you should not be putting your trust in government. Why should you not put your trust in government? Very simple. Do you trust your neighbor with everything? Do you trust a random stranger? People in government are human beings just like everybody else, and they treat it very much like a job. You also have to take into consideration, no matter the best intentions, nor even if someone is truly trying to do something benevolent, taxes are taken from us and then they are returned, quote unquote, if you're doing a tax return. But this is a long and involved process, and you basically have to make do with less money to begin with. Let's get on to the rich factor here. The idea of taxing the rich more doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Two reasons. The first one is that if the person is rich, they are trying to spend their money. Maybe some people sit on it. Yes, that's a possibility, but that's also their choice. But a lot of people who spend money, a lot of people who make money will spend money. It's because they want things. They want to live that lifestyle. And their lifestyle supports directly many individuals. They don't just keep it for themselves. There are things that they want. And they purchase those services, those items, that lifestyle. They are directly and indirectly making jobs. Something that the government fails to do very often. The government can't just say, you are going to make jobs and do this. It doesn't work that way. You have to do something desirable. So when somebody makes something desirable, they attract attention. When somebody has, they want more. They want something new. They maybe want something to show their status. And this is a very involved process. It's a very costly process. And it's also a lucrative one. The idea of taxing the rich is to say that they are undeserving, which is not true. It is simply not true. The reason why some people make a lot more money is because they are doing a lot more. And in other cases, it's because they're incredibly stable. You look at some people and how they spend their money, people who are wealthy, and you think they are reckless. But there have been stories of people winning the lottery, and this person would be broke in less than a year, possibly even a month. So as extravagant as their life appears, and yes, there are wicked people who have a lot of money who don't deserve it, that's not something you can't throw everyone into the same basket and say guilty. If blind prejudice against any group of people is wrong, then it's also wrong to group the rich into such a category. Now the last part, governments, which is the problem. The government basically takes a lot of money from these individuals and then they pat themselves on the back and say, look what we are doing for the people. Which is, okay, people can, the government can raise the wage all they want, but they can control how much the dollar is worth. The government works with the company, and it doesn't have to be an agreement that anyone is aware of. They're just aware of the method and they know that this works. The company does not have to abide by any laws. They take a rap for, they're the ones left holding the bag. And the government could have said, you have to provide more for your employees, but they don't do this. All they do is that they tax the rich and say, look what we have done. The problem is that the employees' actual work is lost in the company itself. And it's also lost to, admittedly, in many cases, insanely high payouts to company leaders, or maybe just one company leader. The government loves this. The reason they love it is because you never suspect, the employee nor the voter, you never suspect that this is how they fleece the quote-unquote little people. You go into a job, you get paid a limited amount. Costs are lost in both the company's day-to-day workings. They'll call it expenses, so forth, and they'll make sure that they pay their president or CEO an extremely high salary. And then the government says, oh, look at this rich person. They're taking your money. They're not taking the rich person's money. He's still rich. Even being insanely rich, there are people, common trope. We know of definite examples where people simply just hoarded money that they didn't need. They didn't even spend it. But the CEO of the company is still quite happy with his salary. And the government gets to look like the hero, which they are not. It doesn't go back to you. It has to go and pay all the government employees first. It might even get lost. It might get sent to another nation. Instead of the government saying your taxes are so high, they are still taking money from you. They're taking from the rich, who have already taken from you, and you're not getting anything back out of it. So besides not being taught about taxes, besides taxes being extremely complex, needlessly complex, and despite the idea of tax the rich, you are still losing money and you will not get it back.